This episode of the Downtown Rams podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Thrive Fantasy. Thrive Fantasy is your daily fantasy platform for player props. Now, Thrive Fantasy is offering our listeners an instant match on their first deposit of at least $20. Use promo code DTSN when signing up today. Start picking your props, racking up points, and winning cash prizes.
Aaron Donald creates the fumble. Goff goes crashing into the end zone.
It is intercepted by Jalen Ramsey.
Robert Woods, touchdown, LA!
Picked off by John Johnson.
Caught, touchdown, Tyler Higbee. It's Michael Brockers who gets there.
A'Shawn Robinson.
Cooper Kupp plucks it out of the air.
Taylor Rapp, who had one taken away, will take this into the end zone.
Henderson with a good run and a first down, still on his feet.
Safety in the arms of Leonard Floyd.
Up top, touchdown, Van Jefferson.
Terrell Lewis.
Everett in stride. Wow!
Hit behind the line, Terrell Burgess, 26.
Gets by some Hopkins at the goal line and in for his second touchdown.
Malcolm Brown into the end zone.
Abu Khan with the strip sack.
Picked off by Troy Hill.
Akers with a stiff arm. Akers into the end zone. Cam Akers.
LA will play for the Lombardi.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Downtown Rams podcast. I'm Alexis Kraft, joined here as always by my co-host Jake Ellenbogen, who never tells me until the second before he hits record that I'm doing the intro. And everyone knows how I feel about doing the intro. I'm uncomfortable with it. But I was just telling Jake before he hit record on me that even though the Rams won this game, Jake, it just doesn't feel like celebrating a win. Like normally after the Rams win, like there's kind of this like elation going on between us and Rams fans. Like obviously your team just won. And even though we won today, it doesn't feel like we won because the game was just not great to watch. I mean, just what were your overall thoughts on this Rams versus Giants game today?
I mean, it was boring, very boring. They started off, I don't know. I thought the Rams offense looked good to start, first drive and everything, and obviously the defense getting two straight, 3-and-out stops on Daniel Jones and the Giants, sacking Daniel Jones 5 times. Obviously the defense showed some heart there, but it was just a boring game. And I think, I think the fans of like the 80s are probably listening to this, rolling their eyes because this is probably a game that they enjoyed. The physicality of this game. This is more of a 80s football game. This is not a today type of game. This is not a passing era type of game. So, you could call it being spoiled and, you might be right in that regard. But you and I are used to this Rams team. I mean, maybe it's just the fact that the Rams played the Giants. And the last time I saw the Rams and Giants game, I was there and the Rams scored 51 in that game. And it was just a total bloodbath. I mean, they absolutely dominated the Giants in every which way. And I guess to see this in LA, which also is kind of interesting. I get, obviously they just came back from the East Coast back to back and they didn't stay out there because of COVID. So they took 2 separate trips to the East Coast, dominated the Eagles and then came back from 25 down only to lose on the last play of the game against the Bills. And I guess, there could have been some fatigue that really set in throughout all that. That's a lot of traveling, a lot of miles there. I'm sure Sean McVay probably felt that was possible. He won't make an excuse for that, but I'm sure as a coach, you have to imagine that, you think about those things. And I think that he went in, with a game plan that was super ultra conservative. That's how I took it anyway, and really gave this Giants defense credit. Now, to our credit, we've said on the podcast, we thought the Giants had a good defense. And the problem with the Giants defense and why it's looked so bad is because late in games when they're, on the field the whole game, they start to get tired and give up, every single play. But the Rams, their offense wasn't good at all. Aside from, one drive and then, that drive where Gerald Everett fumbled on. The Rams offense didn't move the needle for me. Jared Goff still ends up with a 25 out of 32, completion attempt, ratio there. And then having 200 yards and a touchdown and not throwing that interception. His day looks pretty good at sitting there at 103.1 passer rating. But the Rams ran for 58 yards on the ground. Once again, they hold the Giants to, they hold another team under 100 yards rushing for their leading rusher. But they still gave up 136. So, I think this defense was better than advertised. I know a lot of people were harping on them the whole game, but they only gave up 9 points, despite the fact this offense that everyone loves to talk about looked pretty much like the Giants have looked over the last 2 weeks. And that's really, it would be concerning, except I don't put too much stock because of all the travel that happened.
Yeah, I mean, in a shocking plot twist, my issue this game isn't with the defense, it's with the offense. The past couple of games, I felt like the Rams defense just hasn't been playing up to my expectation, and I think a lot of people's expectations. But, you're right. They only held the Giants to 9 points this game, which is a sentence that I can't believe I'm saying, like, only held the Giants to, 9 points. Like, we should have held them to 0 points. I mean, it's just, I don't know if any of that made sense, but it's just the defense played better. My issue with this game and with the offense is what I'm trying to wrap my head around right now is I can't decide, and maybe you have better insight into this than I do, but I can't decide if what was happening on offense was just purely a result of bad play calling by McVay and the OC, or if it just, for whatever reason, the offense wasn't clicking. Because in a weird way, as frustrated as I was watching the offense, it almost to me seemed like the play calling was just all over the place. It just, I know we talked about how we didn't run the ball a lot, but it seems like we didn't try to run the ball a lot, which was confusing to me. So what were your thoughts overall on the play calling from Sean McVay? And do you think that it was the play calling that kind of was holding the Rams back, or do you think just for whatever reason Goff and the offense just couldn't get it done?
Well, I don't think Goff played particularly bad. I don't think he was great, but, the stats kind of show the game that I saw. 200 yards, kept it kind of close to the best and didn't really, go for the big play deep down the field. A couple times, but it didn't pan out. But they weren't, constantly throwing the ball down the field. He wasn't constantly missing his targets. He had one awful throw that wasn't picked, so I'm not going to get him in trouble for that. But I felt like as a whole, it was the Sean McVay failing to balance a game. And I know that sounds weird because he did, by measure, 25 passes, 23 runs, but I still felt like they didn't run the ball enough. When you're in a tight-knit game like that, I feel like you really have to take control of the clock. And I don't feel like Sean McVay really did that. His thing, he's done a really nice job this year of dominating the possession, time of possession. I don't feel like the Rams did that in this game at all. And, you really have to give credit to the Giants. Their offense wasn't any bit impressive at all. But they hung in there, despite not really being able to do much of anything the whole game. They hung in there, but the credit actually should go to the defense. And, mainly there's a few guys, and we said it coming in. I mentioned it on 2 podcasts, ours and the One Giant podcast. I said, look, Blake Martinez is a hell of a player. He's having a great year. He's a guy that you have to watch out for. Up front with Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams, and of course, Dalvin Tomlinson. I thought they did a really nice job of stifling the run. And Sean McVay, because of their ability to stifle the run up front, Sean McVay went away from the run and didn't stick to one particular back. And I think he took himself out of a rhythm. So that was on the Giants there. Austin Johnson had himself a good game, who was actually, fun fact, was part of the trade that the Rams acquired the Jared Goff pick from the Titans. Austin Johnson was one of the picks that the Titans used to select him. So Johnson looked good, I thought. And then I think you really have to give credit to the secondary, mainly Logan Ryan, James Bradbury, and I really thought that Yiadom played well as well, Isaac Yiadom. But, I thought those guys played extremely well. I don't think – the thing is, like, it looks bad, Jared Goff taking, his 2 sacks and, how he was getting pressured. And you can say the offensive line struggled because I did see people saying that all you want. But at the end of the day, I don't think the offensive line struggled. I think what ended up happening, and you saw it, James Bradbury, Logan Ryan, and Isaac Yiadom really did a nice job of holding down this wide receiver group. I mean, this is a talented group, and they came in and they did a nice job of holding down Cooper Kupp. I mean, he broke through at the end of the game, but I mean, for 5 catches, 69 yards, and a touchdown, that's a Cooper Kupp game when Robert Woods and someone else goes off, not leading all your receivers. So I felt like they did a nice job holding him in check, holding Robert Woods to 35 yards on 7 targets, Josh Reynolds to 25, Tyler Higbee with 21. I mean, it was only 200 total yards from the receiving group today. And that's, a credit to what, the Giants defense was able to do. So, I don't know how much it was McVay. I think I'd give him responsibility and blame him for the lack of run game, because sticking with Darrell Henderson 8 carries this week after you saw what he did against Buffalo, there's just no excuse. You got to keep pounding the rock with him. And Malcolm Brown was really in a lot of this game. But, I'd give him that blame. But I'm not necessarily going to give him the blame for the play calling, as far as the throws that were supposed to be made. Because first off, Jared Goff, I'm not going to give entire blame to, because this receiver group was unable to separate. I mean, you saw it all game long. Bradbury and company, I've already mentioned them now 3 times. They just did a really nice job. And unfortunately, when that happens, it doesn't matter how good your offensive line is or how good your quarterback is. There's not really much you can do. You have to fit in the tight windows. You have to just kind of force it in there. And that wasn't Sean McVay's game plan. So I think Sean McVay was telling him to, keep it low and keep it close to the best. A lot of dump offs, a lot of design screens. And, people laughed. But when Sean McVay said this is, one of the tougher defenses to game plan around, he wasn't kidding. This is a good defense. We've said it. And, they showed it today.
Yeah, and I'm not taking anything away from the Giants defense. I think you're right. I think the Giants defense showed up to play, and they did. I think that they're probably a pretty, frustrated group of players. I mean, the Giants were 0-3 going into this game, and, they wanted a win just as bad as we did, and maybe honestly a little more, because they were 0-3. But it's just, I feel like there's this weird thing going on with the play calling with the Rams. Like, it's really good, but then there's just like a string of really weird play calls that we see. And that's why I was asking, because like, what is up with these screens on 3rd and 10 or 3rd and long? Like, there's just weird things that keep happening like that. Or like, why were we not running the football more? I mean, we talk about how we had low rushing yards because we didn't rush the ball a lot. I mean, it's just weird stuff that I feel like I saw today. Mostly offensively, I thought our defense obviously, got the job done. They didn't play amazing, but they played well enough to win. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like the play calling, when I was scrolling through my Twitter feed, everyone was just kind of questioning why we had kind of these short throw passes, especially when we had long yards to gain, and then we just weren't rushing the football. But I will say, I know that the Rams scored not as, everyone was thinking the Rams were going to like win 50-0 or whatever. But I did say that it was going to be 28-7 Rams. And part of the reason that I said 28-7 is, one, I don't know, predicting a blowout. I feel like whenever people predict blowouts, it goes the opposite way, which is kind of what happened here. But why I said 28-7 is I do think, for whatever reason, and you can correct me if I'm wrong or you disagree, that sometimes this Rams team, and I'm sure probably most NFL teams, play down to their competition. I was a little worried about that. And I posted a video on Twitter this morning kind of telling the Rams, kind of jokingly, but mostly serious, like, you can't go into any game thinking that you're going to win or that you're the better team. You have to go balls to the wall 100% of the time, because if you don't, you have a really high chance actually losing that game. And for a while, it looked like that's what the Rams were doing. And that was so frustrating to me, as I just felt like, if the Rams had been playing their full potential, then yeah, we probably would have gotten that blowout. But it just didn't seem like they did to me. So what are your thoughts on that? And I don't remember exactly what your score prediction was either. But
mine was 45-10. So
okay, so I got the better
I
of this.
expected a blowout.
Yeah,
you did.
But even like 28-7, I was like feeling guilty. I was like, that's too low. But it was 19, or I'm not looking at the score, but like, you know what I mean? Like I just
17-9.
17.
I wouldn't call that a loss for you. I mean, you're 11 points off from the Rams. But I mean, I wouldn't call that a loss. You missed the Giants by 2. It's a good. Yeah, I mean, let's be real here. This wasn't really predictable. No one would have thought the Rams coming off such a brutal loss and so like angry. You have to imagine the anger that was in the Rams and how they wanted to take it out on the Giants. No one would have thought that they would have been so kind of lackluster, especially the way that they started off, the game. So I don't know. I mean, I don't take what I'll say for Rams fans that are now worried. You have a win. Okay. You're 3-1. You get to play the Washington football team next week, which I do believe the Rams can win that game. I think anybody that was worried about that being a trap game, this was the trap game. This was essentially the trap game. It's a typical quote unquote trap game because you're coming off an awful loss, and a loss that, you had this miraculous comeback, against, a team that's about to go 4-0. And, to lose on the last play, and then of course, just being on the road the last 2 games and going back home, you could easily see how this could have been a trap game because everybody expected them to dominate and blow them out. And that didn't happen. However, it wasn't a trap game because the Rams didn't get trapped. They ended up winning. And despite, their, like, we complain and we take them for granted, but I mean, there are a lot of fans around the league that would take this 17-9 win in a heartbeat. And I just think, if you're worried, try being a Giants fan right now, 0-4. I'm not worried about the Rams at 3-1. I think this is a game you just kind of throw in the win column and you probably don't look at it the rest of the year. It's one of the weird games that happened week 4 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year. Just a bizarre game at the Coliseum. A team that, they went down 21-0 against Tampa Bay. They came all the way back at the end and then lost. It was like 55-45. Tampa Bay was 0-3, I believe, at that point. So they had actually, ironically, had just been taken down the week before by Daniel Jones and the Giants, aside from, with his 5 touchdown performance. And you saw Tampa Bay just, they went off. And, I felt like, to me, with the Rams, you're always going to have these games. You're always going to have at least one of these games where things don't go according to how everybody expects them to go on paper. And I'm learning, because I feel like we're all learning, essentially. We can make these, inferences, we can make these predictions and all that, but at the end of the day, we're reading a book that's being written live. And so when you're judging based on what you've seen through 3 weeks, and then you say, well, they're more likely to blow out a team that just let a team that had a 3-page injury report throw all over them. I think it's a fair argument. But until you see that being written, you just don't know. And I think, like, you were spot on because you decided to not do the total. I mean, 3 touchdowns is a blowout. Let's call it like it is. But you decided not to go like for the fences type of deal. Like, I had Jared Goff. My bold prediction was 6 touchdown passes. Like, I was thinking more of the Rams that beat the Giants 51-17 and wasn't thinking really logically. And I've learned from that. I probably won't make a prediction like that again, but I don't think, people are going to be worried because it's like, I don't know why, but people treat the NFL like college football. Like, the way you win, strength of victory actually matters. In the grand scheme of things, the NFL is you win and you're in. You lose and you lose. And so it doesn't matter if, like Alabama, when they beat Citadel, they can't beat Citadel 20-10 or they drop in the standings. But if they beat them 50-0, all of a sudden everyone's like, that's Alabama. It's not like that in the NFL. You win your game and you move on. And I think really, this is what it is, Alexis. This is entertainment. So we selfishly wanted a blowout and didn't get it. And so there's no reason to be worried. Be disappointed, sure, but don't be worried about this team, especially coming off their 2 back-to-back trips on the East Coast. They were probably pretty tired.
Yeah. And I think that you make a good point that lots of teams in the NFL right now would kill to have the win that we had today because it's a win. So we have to just, obviously we're talking about this from breaking the game down. And I think that, when the reason that it gets kind of disappointing when you see the Rams play like they played today is because we know that sometimes that carries on to the rest of the season. So it's really important to, for the Rams after this win today to be okay, we got the win. That's good. But there's some things that we need to work on and we need to do differently and maybe switch it up next week. Like you mentioned, next week we're playing the Washington football team, which again is another one of these games that I think is typically a game that Rams fans are going to think that we're going to go in there and blow them out and whatnot, but we cannot approach it that way, especially after the way that we played today, because the way that we played today wasn't, I don't think necessarily up to par with the way the Rams should be playing. There just wasn't a lot to, break down. But yeah, I'll take the win. I'll take the win any day. A win is a win. It goes down as a win. It certainly helps us, in our standings. So, yeah, definitely, there is something to celebrate there.
Yeah, and the Rams also showed, that they have a pulse as far as rushing the passer. You look at Sam Ebukam, who clearly heard all of the critics, and I thought he had a pretty good game. I mean, I'll have to go back and watch the film to fully know. But based on what I saw a sack, which they now have broken up for Aaron Donald. So Donald got a half a sack there, to answer your earlier question when you texted me. But so, Ebukam got a half a sack. He had a really nice pressure on the quarterback. I don't think they ruled it a tackle for a loss, but it was a pretty nice play. So, I mean, I thought Ebukam looked better. I like that they used Ja'Kai Polite more, like I said they would. Justin Hollins had a sack, a very nice chase down sack on Danny Dimes. I thought they did a nice job, getting to the quarterback. I mean, obviously, this is an offensive line that really isn't playing up to what they should be. I mean, like I pointed out before, Andrew Thomas, early first round pick, Will Hernandez, Kevin Zeitler. When you have guys like that on your offensive line, you expect more. I thought Nick Gates did a nice job of somewhat containing Aaron Donald. I don't think Aaron Donald blew up the game by any stretch. Michael Brockers with a nice sack. Obo had a nice sack. So, and then of course Morgan Fox, can't forget about him. So, I like that they got those guys in there. This was a team win. This is what you look at. Everybody, you won in all 3 phases and you really had to play a complete game. And, I thought everybody did a nice job kind of banding together. I mean, you still had, you had 2 tackles from Nisimba Webster on special teams. So, it's like you had Raymond Calay's really impressive return on the kickoff, which I'm sure a lot of Rams fans were like, okay, where was he? Why was he not playing? So, you have all that. And then, of course, at the end of the game, Darius Williams seals the game with an interception near the goal line. He's able to right his wrong. And not personally, I won't get fully into it, but I don't think he was entirely wrong. I hated that call, so let's just make that obvious. But nevertheless, though, that's a huge play. That was not an easy gimme interception. I don't fault Daniel Jones for throwing that. I felt like it was just a really nice play. He dove and made a really nice play on the football and came down with it and sealed the game. So, I wasn't exactly worried, as weird as that sounds, with the Rams when they were driving. I still felt like the Rams were going to stop him, but it still could have been interesting. And, it's a huge momentum booster for Darius Williams, who I'm sure was feeling really down after last week. So, obviously he's got to be feeling good about that. And shout out to Jalen Ramsey, who has beef beyond the football field.
Well, I want to point that
with Tate.
I want to bring it up really quickly because this just broke right now. I just sent you this video on Twitter. A massive fight broke out after the Rams-Giants game between Jalen Ramsey and Golden Tate. A ton of punches were thrown. I just saw this. They just tweeted this out on Twitter, and I don't necessarily know how rules work in the NFL. It's after the game. However, from my belief, there can be suspensions and fines and everything if anything happens on the field after the game. Jake, I don't know if you know specifics on that rule, but that's something to look out for now here in the next few hours, because clearly there was a large brawl after this Rams-Giants game. By the time you listen to this podcast, you probably will have already seen the video and everything will already be cleared up, but we just saw that just now. So yeah, there's definitely beef between Ramsey and Tate. That goes back years.
Yeah. And I'm not condoning anything that Ramsey did or didn't do to Tate off the field, with his sister. I'm not even getting involved in that, but
yeah,
I know they have beef, and I don't fault Golden Tate for sticking up to, for his family, but at the same time, I'm like, Ramsey and him have an issue, and he's tweeted at him before. He's made it known that he doesn't respect him. So I'd imagine, if I got spine busted like I was Goldberg, like WWE, I'd feel like I got pretty disrespected, and I'm sure that probably stuck with him. Of course,
right.
Losing the game stuck with him at the end of the game. So, but I think I also saw some of that. It was Aaron Donald and Nick Gates. So I think, part of that carried over. It was a chippy game. And this is what happens when you have physical football games nowadays, because it's like, these games don't happen enough. They really don't. It's normally, like the Cowboys and Browns game. That seems to be the norm of the NFL today is, high octane passing attack, both ways. But this was more physical. Every down meant something. And I think when you get into those types of games, those altercations, that heat in the moment really takes hold. So I hope no one gets suspended. I personally think it's really stupid for the Rams to get involved in anything when they just beat them on the field. There's no point for getting physical.
Yeah,
I'll say this: if the NFL doesn't suspend anybody, I think Sean McVay might consider doing it. That's really not we, not me. So just watch out for that.
Right. And watching this video again, by the time people listen to this podcast, everything will be cleared up and we'll probably know more specifics. But it looks like it probably started with Ramsey and Tate, and then everybody got involved, which is something that you shouldn't do. Ramsey and Tate, obviously they have their beef. I'm not picking a side. We're not going to debate whether it's justified or not. But if it's between them, I think that's just one of those times that, you want to step in, you want to be there for your teammate. But this isn't an issue about something that happened during the game. I think it would be different if the beef was game related. That's some really personal family stuff. And that's between Ramsey and Tate. And I think it probably would have been wise for both the Rams and the Giants if they saw anything. Don't do like a baseball clearing the benches thing. Let them have their thing. They're going to dig their own graves. They've got their own thing going on. When you start to get everybody involved, that's kind of when you're bordering that fine line of more than one person getting in trouble. So, and we'll see. But I just thought I'd throw that out there that video just came out while we're recording, and obviously we'll probably know more about that. But yeah, it was a chippy game, which isn't always a bad thing. Both teams really wanted to win, probably for different reasons. But at the end of the day, the Rams won. I'm going to take it. Let's go into week 5, 3-1, and let's, go into Washington operating on all cylinders.
No, I hear you there. And I think, like you said, you can't get the whole team involved. And, this will be a learning, moment, obviously. But I also think it's just kind of a one-time thing. I think that those two guys had history that, dated back. And, they circled this game on their calendar for that reason. And, you can clearly see that, at least it takes two to tango. So, both guys probably had both each other living in their heads rent free. But, I think you just, at the end of the day, you have to look at it. The Washington football team is next week. You can't allow, you're out of, you can't allow something where you completely go out of line after you've already played the game, you can't allow that to affect the next game. And I think that's one thing I think Sean McVay is going to make clear to this team. I think anybody involved in this altercation could be suspended. I really do. I think the NFL really has a no tolerance policy with punching. We've seen it with Andre Johnson and Cortland Finnegan back Houston and Tennessee. We've seen it plenty of times. Albert Hainsworth on the field. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they issue suspensions. And if that's the case, then, it's a next man up league, but you would really hate to see that because, no win is guaranteed in the NFL. And if the Rams are without Jalen Ramsey next week, I mean, things start to get a little interesting, especially with, somebody like Terry McLaurin coming to town, for the football team. So yeah, it'll be something we'll look out for. We'll see.
We will see. I'm sure, again, by the time this comes out, there'll be more clarification on what exactly occurred. But, as always, thanks for tuning in, guys. We won this week, which is awesome. We are now 3-1 going into week 5. So as always, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Downtown Rams. You can follow me on Twitter at the Alexis Craft. You can follow Jake on Twitter at JK Bogan DTSN. Thanks, guys. Have a good one and go Rams.